I can't say that it's the best thing since sliced bread, but it might be the best thing since that piece of burnt toast I made this morning. Howdy, I'm Kurt Williams, and today we're looking at issue 1 of Moonman by Kid Cudi, Kyle Higgins, and Marco Locati. Now, everybody knows that the best comic writers are people who have nothing to do with comics, like The Weeknd, or like Andrew Tate. Aside from Gerard Way's excellent series Umbrella Academy, most comics that were written by celebrities from other areas of media just don't work out that well. And this is a prime example. Moonman is based on, or maybe just inspired by, his album Man on the Moon from 2009, but Kid Cudi wasn't the only one writing this comic series. He also had help from Kyle Higgins, who you might know from Radiant Black. When Radiant Black first started coming out, I bought the first couple issues and wasn't very impressed, but I hadn't read Invincible at the time, so maybe I just didn't know what to expect. So since then I haven't read anything by Kyle Higgins. I haven't been keeping up with the Radiant Black universe at all. But after reading this, I wanted to compare Kyle Higgins' writing when he's by himself to Kyle Higgins' writing when he's working with Kid Cudi. And man, Radiant Black is so much better than Moonman. Upon my second reading of Radiant Black, I like it a lot more, and I'm probably going to go back and collect it now. But upon my second reading of Moonman, I liked it even less. So here's the brief synopsis. A group of astronauts go on a basically SpaceX-funded flight to the moon, but something goes wrong, and they lose connection between the astronauts and Earth for about 7 minutes. And in that 7 minutes, something weird happens that hasn't been explained yet in the comic. But the main character, Ramon, who's basically Kid Cudi, now has some kind of powers, or can see this weird psychedelic moon vision once in a while. It's really vague. Meanwhile, Ramon's relationship with his younger brother is strained because his younger brother believes that the company Ramon works for is basically the devil, and later, when Ramon's brother is at a protest outside Ramon's company that he works at, it turns violent and Ramon shows up to save his brother from being beaten by the cops. Ramon's brother wants him to be a superhero now that he has these powers, but Ramon isn't really interested in it, and at the end we're left with Ramon being confused about all these strange new experiences he's having with his body. It's not a bad premise, but it's just done so poorly. The first page is this cool psychedelic image that has absolutely no meaning to the reader, which is immediately followed up by this awkward transition that also makes no sense. I have no idea what information I'm supposed to be getting from that image. The dialogue on the next page where we get introduced to Ramon is okay until the very end when Ramon is uncharacteristically dramatic for an astronaut, but the art is absolutely terrible here. It's so impersonal. We barely get a good look at Ramon. It's like we don't even know the guy. And then when we're supposed to be hearing the scientist talk to him, it's nobody in particular talking to other scientists, not speaking directly to him. It just seems like the artist hadn't even read the dialogue. They just knew that they had to draw some scientists. A couple pages later we see Ramon using his powers for the very first time, but I didn't understand that's what was going on until my second time through it. It's just not very obvious. It's not drawn very clearly. There's not a lot of clarity here. Next we have a couple pages establishing that they're back in Cleveland, which I think is well paced, but this page with the cashier moves way too fast. Those 3 panels we get have a lot of stuff going on that should have been stretched out into more panels. And the emotion on her face is so terribly done. What is she supposed to be expressing there? And did he just tip the cashier $60 when all he bought was a roll of paper towel? That's a weird flex. Next, we're introduced to Ramon's brother Micah, even though in the first 3 panels we see him in, we don't see his face. When you introduce a character, you have to show their face. When you introduce a character, you have to show their face. And then Micah starts asking Ramon about his trip to space because he hasn't seen him since then, even though on the previous page he had sent Ramon a very casual text about picking up paper towels. Like, Ramon just got released from 6 weeks of quarantine. You think the best thing to do is casually text him to pick up paper towels on his way home? You haven't seen him since this national event that everybody in the country knows about, and that's what you're texting him? Now I'm wondering why we even needed the paper towel bit anyway. Was that just a way for us to see that people know who he is? Was that just a way for us to see the newspapers talking about him and the company he works for so we can get some, like, clever exposition? Because if that's all that was for, then that's kinda lame. And then here's something that bothered me. Ramon and Micah seem to be tight. Like, they are good brothers, they like each other. And then I can't tell what's happening here, because it looks like Ramon is joking around, saying, "Oh yeah? What do you know about anthems?" And he's hitting him with a pillow, which seems, you know, fun. He's just messing around. But then Micah responds by saying, "At least when you grew up, you could still have dreams!" And by the way, does he have a face? He's just got one big hole in the middle, like a nostril on a blank face. And also, that is the worst drawing I've ever seen of somebody grabbing a pillow. That is terrible. So then Micah starts complaining to Ramon about how he works at this company that's so terrible and has private prisons, and his probably pretty terrible, but it's just like a out of nowhere switch in the conversation. And then Micah just disappears to go to the protest. While Micah is gone, Ramon has this trip down memory lane that tells us absolutely nothing about his childhood. It's kind of a pointless waste of space. But his memories of his childhood lead us to this crazy memory of what happened in those 7 minutes up in space, and it's really cool to look at, and that's all that matters. Just look at it, it's cool. And then we got a couple pages where Ramon realizes that where Micah is starting to get violent, and he's checking in on him and not getting any answers. And we've got this weird transition panel at the very end of this page, which looks like somebody's silhouette in a mask, maybe? And then all of a sudden, Ramon is at the protest wearing this astronaut costume that has no real function to it. It doesn't mention why he puts the costume on. It doesn't mention what the costume does for him. It doesn't mention why he still has all these components of an astronaut's outfit, even though they don't belong to him. But he's got glowing cosmic rainbow eyes, and that's really cool, so let's focus on that. Don't think about all the plot holes. So he gets Micah out of danger, and then he has this weird, like, Dragon Ball Z mixed with Spawn moment where he's got these cable strap things that are just way too freaking long. And then this conversation they have afterwards where Micah is like, you're a superhero now, you gotta be a superhero. And Ramon is like, no, I freaking don't. Is okay. There's a semi-realistic conversation between them where we're shown that they are metaphorically worlds apart, which is a cool idea but kind of done in a clunky way. And Micah is saying, be idealistic, do the right thing. And Ramon is saying, I'm doing an okay thing and I'm making money, and money matters. And the way that they're setting up this character of Ramon as a pragmatist astronaut, combined with the note that Kid Cudi left at the end of the book where he talks about how this is a journey of self-discovery for the main character Ramon, makes me nervous that they're going to try to say that providing for your family, no matter how you have to, is less than following your dreams and doing the right thing, even though you're getting hurt and you're getting other people hurt and you will have no prospects in life. And I just can't take the note that he left at the end of the issue very seriously, because he says, Moonman is a character for the people. I wanted to make a hero that represented all that was good in the world and followed a man on a journey of self-discovery. Yeah? That one guy is going to represent all that's good in the world? That point did not come through in this comic. So looking at the comic as a whole, the dialogue has some good moments, but is largely disjointed and rough and just totally impersonal. I don't feel like I connected with any of these characters. The transitions between scenes were clunky and the whole story felt kind of aimless, and they stopped in certain moments that just didn't have any kind of emotion to them. I don't even know why they were there. And the art style that Marco Locati uses has this kind of cool, almost kinetic energy feel to it in the action sequences and the psychedelic stuff. It's unique and recognizable and it feels like something. But a lot of the book is just people talking, and Locati does not specialize in showing emotion on faces. I just don't feel interested in looking at these pages of talking heads. And that's coming from someone who usually loves reading comics that have just a bunch of talking heads. Something that doesn't normally bother me in comics, but when it does bother me, it really bothers me, is the lettering, because the word bubbles in particular have these weird shapes to them that are just pointlessly frivolous, I guess is the word I would use. Even the regular word bubbles that aren't supposed to convey any emotion by their shape are not perfect bubbles. They're like scratchy, angular bubbles that have no reason to look so poorly drawn. And the font also kind of bothers me. It just doesn't feel right, and that's the best I can explain it. So this comic touches on ideas that I think are really cool and I would like to see explored, such as a young generation who has lost all hope for the future, or an older brother making moral compromises so that he can provide for his younger brother. But these cool ideas that are brought up in this issue have such terrible follow-through that I can't possibly care about what happens in the series. And yeah, the psychedelic images where we see Ramon's character figuring out that he has powers, sort of, is cool to look at, but it doesn't mean anything to me yet. I don't know what kind of powers he's gonna have. I don't know why he's gonna use them. I don't even know what questions to ask that would make me interested. The first issue of a series shouldn't answer all your questions so that you're totally good to go on what happens next in the series. The first issue of a series should be making you ask questions so that you come back for issue 2 and issue 3 so you can find the answers to these questions. And I just do not care enough about the series to ask any questions. So I'm gonna give issue 1 of Moonman like a 4 out of 10. It's one of the lowest ratings I've ever given on a comic. This is just so poorly done. It's ambitious and it's cinematic and it wants to feel so important, but all that does is make it an even bigger letdown when the story has no real substance to it. And it says in the end of the issue that there's music as a soundtrack for this comic, and if you go to moonmancomic.com you can listen to the song. And I tried that. I went to the website and I couldn't find the music anywhere. I really wanted to hear the song, but it's just not accessible. This issue is just a big budget flop. Kid Cudi should stick to making music, even though his last album wasn't all that good. So that's my rating, 4 out of 10. Kyle Higgins, what have you done? I don't want to spend any more money on this series, and I can't recommend you spending your money on it either. But hey, maybe I missed something. Maybe there's some connection to his albums that I'm not seeing, or some parallel that would make this comic seem much better. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Let me know if there's something else that I could know that might make me appreciate it more. If you read it, let me know what you think.